right, there we go.
Cool. All right, hello everyone.
Okay.
Welcome to our very first Yeldcast.
Okay. The question is that backwards? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know which one is the correct way. Anyway, I'm Jake. I'm Jake Richmond.
And I'm Nick Smith.
And thank you for joining us.
Indeed, it's the first one. Very exciting.
Yeah. We're going to be trying to do a new Yeldcast every month, and the idea is that we'll put this on YouTube, but you can also come and join us here and ask us questions, and we'll be sharing information about what we're doing with Yeld, what we're working on, and what our plans for the immediate future are.
That is the goal.
Yep. If you want to ask questions, please post them in the Ask Jake and Nick channel, and we'll answer them either at the end of the show or if they pertain to something we're talking about while we're talking.
All right. Yeah, let me get those all open here.
Right.
I'm sure it'll take a few minutes for a couple people to flood in. That's usually how it works.
Yeah, but
looks like we got. Go ahead.
Oh, let's not wait for tons of people. We've got a little bit of a crowd here. Hi, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started since we have a lot to cover.
All right. Where do you want to start?
Okay. Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about the Kickstarter. As I think every single one of you know, back in March we did a Kickstarter for our new Mermaid Hunters set, and it was mildly successful. I want to be modest here because it wasn't as hugely successful as our first Yeld Kickstarter, but we knew it was going to be a smaller project, and it more than funded what it needed to.
Yeah,
it did fine. So we're really excited to be able to produce Mermaid Hunters as a box set. I hope you're all excited too. It's going pretty well. The content for Mermaid Hunters, the book, it's done. It's ready to go. We're really looking forward to releasing it. We're going to have it back from the printers next month, and we're really excited to see how it looks. We're going to do an unboxing video when we get that, so you can see everything that's in the box. We're also going to have the chance to send the box to some people so they can do their own stupid unboxing videos. So there's going to be, in July, there's going to be like a week where we're flooding you with unboxing videos of Mermaid Hunters, and you can be like, yeah, it's just, we've seen all this before.
That's how we get it out there. That's the goal.
Yeah, right. We're going to annoy the shit out of you by showing you the same stuff over and over again. So in addition to Mermaid Hunters, as part of the Kickstarter, we also are producing the Rank 1 Adventure Set, the Swordmaster Job Guide, the what else are we doing here? The Summer Collection, which collects all the unlocked additional content from the Kickstarter into one book or PDF. And then I feel like there's something else, but I'm blanking on it.
The action board was the other thing that was part of this Kickstarter.
We got to do a deluxe action board too, and we have a new design for it. I might pull that out later. I'm not sure where on my computer it is, but I might share that with you all later.
I'm pretty sure that was everything.
Yeah. Oh, and then the cat.
Of course, the cat.
Yeah, and those of you who support our Patreon already got access to the cat friend type, and we hope you like it. We think it's a lot of fun. So, what I want to do first is I want to talk about. Getting back to the Kickstarter, what we want to tell you is we think we're still on schedule. We think we're still going to be able to start shipping Kickstarter rewards in late July, which is not really on schedule. That's about a week and a half later than we hoped. But as far as Kickstarters go, that's pretty good.
Yeah, on the track record of Kickstarter in general, being a week later than expected is fantastic.
And the last time we did a Yeld Kickstarter, we were almost a year and a half late, maybe almost 2 years late. So
no matter what we do, it's better.
Yeah. We think that most of you are going to see your packages in late July or early to mid-August. And obviously, if you live outside of the U.S., that's going to take a little longer. But you're gonna be playing Mermaid Hunters before the end of the summer. We're really excited about that. And go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say
this. The slight delay really does it. I was just going to mention that this is the first time we've used BackerKit. We didn't last time. And we're hoping that it's actually made an easier experience, because it seems like it's definitely done that for us. Being able to sort of charge for shipping later after we've figured out more stuff really helps. Being able to, allow others to buy in after the Kickstarter's done, I feel like it was a really big plus. So I know, I'm happy that we got to use BackerKit this time.
Yeah, I don't want to spill the tea too much, but being able to bring in additional revenue through BackerKit after the Kickstarter ends actually really helps out. It shifted this project from being a project that was totally successful and funded to a project where Nick and I actually make a little bit of money off it before we actually start selling the product. And that's a big deal for us, because we really appreciate your support through Patreon, and we really appreciate your support by buying books and buying the expansions, but also extra money from Kickstarters is part of how we survive.
Yeah, it is a strange part of how you make money in this business. It's just hoping that you're over successful.
Yeah, and because we were a little we weren't sure how successful Mermaid Hunters would be as a Kickstarter, because last time, of course, as you all know, the Mermaid Hunters Kickstarter did not fund. So we set a relatively low goal, and we just kind of accepted that goal wouldn't include Nick and I walking away with a paycheck. But that's not the case, and we're really happy about that. So thank you all so much. Okay, let's actually get on to some exciting stuff. We want to tell you a little bit what you can expect in the new Mermaid Hunters set. We made some changes. If you owned a copy of the Mermaid Hunters PDF previously, and we've actually had a few different versions over the years, you can expect to see that the PDF has been greatly cleaned up. We got rid of a lot of typos, a lot of errors. We also did a lot of new layout work on it. It looks a lot better. It's a really nice looking book. I think it's one book now instead of two booklets, which we think makes it easier to navigate. One of the things a lot of you complained about is that in playing the Mermaid Hunters adventures, when you would get to the fights against Miss Vanessa or against the werewolf or some of the other characters, but those are spoilers, by the way, you would have to, page back and forth in the book looking for different rules. So one of the things we wanted to do was we wanted to put all the rules for that fight right on those pages. So all the spells that you're going to use during those fights, all the special dice you're going to use during those fights, they're right there. So the fight is really, really easy to run. And we think that's super useful. Also, each fight now comes with a section where we give you as the game master advice on how to approach the fight and how to run the fight, and what to do if your players want to take this tactic or that tactic. And I think that gives the game master a lot more options to customize the fight to the players and to address different situations. Players are always going to do what they're going to do, and these adventures are meant to be more springboards and starting points than hard and fast, you have to do this, to do this, to do this. But it gives you a lot more options, and we really like that. The other thing we did with each fight is we gave you options to adjust it if you have more or less than 3 players, or if you feel like your players are a little more powerful or a little less powerful. So there's some options right there on the page to make quick changes.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things when putting together the campaign originally for Mermaid Hunters was sort of making the fights very introductory, right? So it's like, these are super easy, they're not complicated, and so I think that works well for people who just have zero idea what they're doing. But if you have experience in games like this, or just like board games, and have some like tactical experience for how stuff like this works, you are going to wipe the floor with them. And so this is good. This will be a nice change. This will give a challenge to people who are used to this kind of thing, or are playing Yeld again. This isn't their first time, but they're playing with other new players. This will still allow you to be challenged, right?
Yeah. We know.
So yeah, that is a big difference.
Yeah, we know some of you. I don't think our friend Clovis is here tonight, but we know that some of you have run the Mermaid Hunters adventures a whole bunch of times, and we think this will give you some new options to make that more fun. But another thing we did for players who, for both players who have run these adventures a bunch of times, as well as for new players or players who are maybe not so much interested in a rank 0 adventure, but actually want to get into the meat of Yeld, is we've provided some new interesting content that wasn't in Mermaid Hunters before. And this is all content that we developed with Yeld players. So
Yeah.
the first thing we have to show you today is a new red spell, and this is called Calm Before the Storm. And I'm putting a piece of art up in the general chat so you can see the art we did for it. Calm Before the Storm is a really cool red spell. It's a spell you can get at rank 0, but you're going to want to get it and add it to your spell collection. So if you're able to cast red spells, if you're a black mage or a white mage or a red mage or a warrant mage or any number of other spellcasters, you'll want to get this spell. And what it does is it has two functions. The first function is you can cast it during the first round of a fight, and every single friend in the fight within range, it has a relatively short range, so you want to be close together. Every single friend you cast it on can immediately take a free restore roll during the fight, and that allows you to start a fight by healing everybody up, which is really useful. The other thing you can do is outside of a fight, you can cast it on a friend, and the next time they make a restore roll, which is how you get your core dice back, by the way, in case you haven't played Yeld before. The next time they make a restore roll, they're going to add an extra die to that restore roll, which is a smaller buff, but still really useful.
It is. I mean, in general, healing is really limited. Like anything that's just giving you dice back, especially magic, very limited. Like there's in the white spell list, there's 2 spells that actually give dice back.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, refresh and refresh.
And so, yeah, and so adding to this is just another heal that you would have access to, which is just so useful to have, especially a red spell that is essentially healing. So yeah, I think this is it just as a nice pickup for anybody who wants to play a caster, right? It's a good choice.
Yeah, and it allows a bunch of other jobs beside white mage to really take on the healing role.
Yeah.
You can be out there as a freelancer or a rank 2 shepherd with their runic wool upgrade from the shepherd guide, or even like a warrant mage or a red mage, and actually take on that role. So we're really excited about this stuff. Our next bit of content is actually a new mentor. Mermaid Hunters already comes with 4 mentors, and mentors are special characters that you can meet in the world of Yeld, and they will teach your friends different things. They will take you under your wing, and they will help you prepare to be heroes, and you learn certain skills from each one of them as long as they are your mentor. You can switch mentors as often as you like, so there's a lot of different skills you can collect. Each mentor has a special quest they'll also send you on. This mentor, which was created by one of our readers, is named Professor Jefferson J. Frog. And again, I'm putting a piece of art up in the general Yeld chat so you can see it. The professor is a traveling scholar. He travels all throughout Yeld. He reviews inns. He reviews restaurants. He collects lore and stories from each town. And his goal is to teach the players about traveling in Yeld. So he's a travel-focused mentor. So if you want to be better at traveling and better at exploring, he's the mentor you want. And he is a normal-sized frog, by the way, not a giant. The professor has a very cool quest to send you on, which involves going through the town of Lake Town. Lake Town's the name of the town.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Mermaid Hunters, yeah.
Yeah, and talking to all the people in Lake Town and gathering their interesting and unique stories for the book that the professor is writing. And the reward for that you get is an early copy of the professor's book, and it has 2 abilities. The first ability allows you to gain back an extra core die when you stay at an inn, which is super useful. And the second town, the second ability allows you to gain a special I know about this town special die anytime you sleep at an inn. So if you go to a new town, like say the town of I don't know the names of the new towns. If you go to Pirate Bay, which is a famous town in Yeld, and you sleep at an inn there, when you wake up, you'll have an I know about Pirate Bay special die. And that's a super useful way to learn about towns and move on as you move on and explore through Yeld. And as Disavowed Paladin just mentioned, Lake Town is also the name of the famous town in The Hobbit where the Archer Bard lives. I don't know if that was intentional on our part, but The Hobbit is always really close to my mind when I'm thinking about Yeld.
Yeah, I mean, I probably wasn't thinking about it, using the name, but for sure, the reference is great. Lord of the Rings is wonderful, and so is The Hobbit. So I have no problem
Yeah.
stealing something without thinking about it.
I mean,
From especially that.
Yeah, I mean, Yeld is in a lot of ways very much a collection of names and ideas and concepts we have stolen from other places and mashed together.
Yeah, I mean, so is sort of every form of storytelling and this kind of thing. I mean, getting to take the best parts of the media we like and making something out of it. I feel like is the ultimate sort of form of flattery, right?
Right.
Being able to take someone else's work and be like, I love this so much that I want to meld it into something else. That's great. And so talking about mentors, because you had mentioned mentors are super important, and he is specifically, I think, a great mentor in the way that he has like a generically good ability, where other mentors are a little more specific to certain things. And in the Rank 1 guide, or Adventure Guide, which is something that is also part of the Mermaid Hunters Kickstarter, we talk about how important mentors are and sort of utilizing them in interesting ways, using them to sort of fuel your adventure and move it forward in different ways because, being mentored by these individual people will sort of define the types of things you're going to be doing, right? Each one of them has their own goal and wants to teach you something. So if you're going to utilize that later on, that's going to sort of define your adventures. So having someone like, Jefferson J. Frog means you're probably going to do a lot of traveling, which is something you're going to do anyway in Yeld, but specifically more often than otherwise.
And Jefferson's special item, his book that he gives you, is one of the ways that we make traveling interesting at Yeld. It rewards you for traveling around. It rewards you for staying at inns and going to new towns, which we then will hope will lead you to actually doing things in those towns and interacting with those townsfolk. Which we then will hope will lead you to our Towns and Territories expansion, which is on sale on our website for $5.
That's right.
And I think probably every single person who's listening to this already owns at this point. So we hope you use that content. The other two new things you're going to find in Mermaid Hunters is two really awesome boss monsters. These were also designed by some players. And we wanted to give you something to do after you play through the campaign. We want Mermaid Hunters to be a box set that you can just play by yourself, even if you're not going to move into the full Yeld role-playing game. So after you beat the main campaign, after you wrap up the story of Miss Vanessa and Mayor Fox and Trevor, and after you decide whether or not you're going to go home through the magical door or you're going to stay in Yeld, we wanted to give you some challenges to face. So we've created, with the help of some of our players, two really cool boss monsters. And these are tough boss monster fights. They're going to be a challenge. They're not going to be something that you can just steamroll your way through. But we think they'll be nice, meaty challenges to get you ready for Rank 1 Yeld. And each of these boss monsters comes with some unique mechanics and their own rewards. The first one, co-created by Glucifer, who is right here today, is the absolutely awesome Avalanche slime. And we showed this off before, but I'm going to show you the art again in general chat. The Avalanche slime is an enormous slime. So slimes are semi-sentient. You all know what slimes are. In Yeld, they're semi-sentient creatures. In the rule book, it says that a slime is what happens when a ghost gets hit by a lightning bolt, which I think is absolutely hilarious.
I mean, those specific slimes.
Right.
That doesn't mean that there's others, out there doing other slime stuff.
Who knows what's going on with slimes? But slimes in the lake region, where Mermaid Hunters take place, are kind of docile creatures who just slime around, and sometimes they talk to people, sometimes they blow bubbles at people. They've got their own things going. But sometimes they get super angry or super agitated. Sometimes if people attack them, they get angry and they start absorbing stuff. They start absorbing rocks and stones and logs and trees and eventually cows and lobsters and farmhouses. And they become these enormous avalanche slimes. And your job as heroes is to calm them down, to drive them off, maybe even to kill them, but to find a way to deal with them. And I think the avalanche slime is a pretty cool monster. She's really tough, and you're going to have to think on how to fight her. And yeah, there are plenty of land lobsters in Yeld, including the famous broccoli lobster. And you will definitely find some broccoli lobsters in the Mermaid Hunters book. Our next boss monster for Mermaid Hunters is a pretty fun one. This is Bessie of Lake Erie, and you all may know Bessie as uh, an actual cryptid from our world, of course, from the famous Lake Erie. The reader who suggested Bessie thought it would be cool if she appeared in both worlds, and I also think that's a really cool idea. So Bessie is a beloved lake monster who lives in the lake region and isn't seen very often. Not everybody is sure she exists. The people of Lake Town don't want you to kill Bessie, even though she's been tipping over fishing ships and going on rampages. Instead, they want you to see what's making her angry and maybe drive her back into the lake so she can calm down. So Bessie is a really dangerous monster that you have to find ways to defeat her besides just stabbing her to death. And if you do,
and I think these are really fun. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you do, the people of Lake Town have a neat reward for you.
Well, I think it's really fun to have like these big boss monster fights because you can build just the entire adventure around sort of figuring out how to fight it. Your tools are limited. What special dice you have are limited. You don't have job abilities, right? And so, because of that, you're gonna have to plan more to fight these things, which is super cool.
Yeah.
And like I said, just being able to build this adventure around, we got to set up traps or we got to do this and that to draw them out and go through this process of not just we walk in and shoot it, right?
Right.
I think it's fun, especially early on.
We really think of Mermaid Hunters in the same way as what is the name of the starting zone in World of Warcraft for humans? Elwyn Forest, where you come into Elwyn Forest in World of Warcraft and you don't really know how anything works. You don't really have any of your powers. You're just going around and you're meeting people. You're defending people's farms, and creatures like Bessie or the Avalanche Slimes or like Hogger. Or the other kind of low-level world bosses in World of Warcraft. And we think that's a really neat experience. Even if you never play beyond Mermaid Hunters, it should be a fun set of adventures with cool monsters at the end for you to defeat. Just about Paladin, just asked, what is the biggest you make a monster before it becomes a new rule set instead of a monster? And that's a really interesting question. I think, if we can diverge a little bit from what we were going to talk about here, I think that something that happens a lot is we'll write up a profile for a monster, the kind you see in the Yeld rulebook or you see in other places, and then we'll think this monster needs a little bit extra, so we start writing extra rules for a monster, like this is what happens during this fight, this is bespoke rules for what the monster does. Yeah, Croesus is the obvious answer, the obvious example of a monster that is more rules than monster, and several of the hunters are kind of the same way. Dragul's boss fight at the end of the Yeld campaign, Dragul has a very set monster profile, but then there's also a bunch of rules that go with that. So I think when we're creating scenarios that are more than just here's a random monster you can plug in anywhere, that's when you start getting monsters that are more mechanic than monsters.
Well, and specifically in the case of Croesus, it was very much like wanting to create an experience that was so different because he's so big, right? You can't just fight him, right? There's nothing about just being able to hit him with a spell or, stab him with your sword. And so to just produce a whole different type of experience, I think is really cool, but it's something I don't want to do very often, right? Because it starts to, I don't know. It cheapens the experience the more versions of that fight exist, right? If there are, 10 fights in Yeld built around the idea of completing a series of challenges as opposed to just doing fighting rolls, right? That just becomes sort of a static thing that you just do over and over again. I don't think that's very fun.
Right.
So things like Croesus, there might be one or two others like that, but it's never going to be a common thing.
Yeah, instead what we want to look at, and we wanted to make each hunter fight special, so that's why Croesus is like that. That's why some of the others are like that. But as we go forward, and especially in the new monster book, which we are working on, and we're going to continue to be working on over the next year, we want to develop ways to make fights more interesting and more versatile within the existing structure of combat in Yeld. I'm not sure. Going back to what Just About Paladin is asking, I'm not sure exactly if there really is a threshold between where a monster is represented on the board as a token or if it's too big for that. One of the things we want to do is we want to have bigger tokens as well. We want to introduce some tokens that are that take up 2 spaces and 4 spaces. And we may see that with our next Kickstarter. Moving on, I would like to tell you about the Swordmaster Advanced Job Guide. We've been working really hard on this, and we have a lot of cool stuff to share. I'm really excited about it. So first of all, Swordmaster is our new advanced job. It is a warrior who uses a sword. The original version of this, which we introduced during the first Yeld Kickstarter as kind of a beta version that we gave to the Kickstarter backers, was kind of the samurai job. And Swordmaster definitely has roots in the samurai-ish archetypes, and specifically in the samurai job from Final Fantasy Tactics. And I think you all know that well, at least I am a big fan of Final Fantasy Tactics. Did you ever play Tactics?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I think I played Ogre Tactics before I played Final Fantasy Tactics.
Sure.
They're sort of the same thing, aren't they?
Right. So, I'm going to share a piece of art with you guys real quick. So, Yeld has a history of sword masters, and each of the peoples of Yeld, each of the different races and species, has their own sword styles. There's a piece of art in the general chat channel that shows this. Fairies prefer enormous swords, and they prefer to just break you down and smash you completely. The King's people prefer fast and smooth movements. The King's people actually share their sword styles with the animal tribes, which is something we talk about in the book, specifically the Rabbit tribe and the famous Rabbit Knight, who is somebody we've mentioned all throughout Yeld and Modest Medusa as well, was one of Yeld's first sword masters. The mermaids and the other people of the deep, the squidmen and the pirates, have a sword style that's all about fighting in darkness and fighting in water. And the vampires have a special sword style designed by Prince Dragul himself, which is about using their immortality and their ability to take wounds and keep moving to just pile on damage over and over again. And the cool thing about being a sword master is these are all styles you can learn. So the sword master is different from other jobs in a few ways. First of all, it's an advanced job. So if you want to take on the Swordmaster job, what you do is you go to the job trainer, and just like any other advanced job, you pay the job trainer a reward die, and Jocasta, the job trainer, says, okay, you can be a Swordmaster now. But you don't get to be a Swordmaster. Instead, you get the Sword Novice advanced job. And here's another piece of art. And by the way, Sarah, our witch, is actually our Swordmaster in this expansion. So the Sword Novice is an advanced job that is not very good. It is all about learning how to use the sword. It doesn't come with any special dice you can buy, but instead it comes with a job ability called Sword Training. And how Sword Training works is that every time you attack a monster and you miss it, you can add 1 extra die to your attack the next time you attack it. So it represents you learning how to use the sword and getting better with the sword. Now, you're going to be a sword novice for a while, because what happens is the job trainer gives you a quest you have to go on to become a sword master. And the quest involves collecting 2 rare swords. You get one of them from the Sushi Kid, who gives it to you for eating a ton of sushi, and the other one is the famous Luck Bunny sword that you have to find. And these are not particularly hard to find. The third part of the quest is facing a ghost of one of Yeld's greatest sword masters. You have to duel this ghost by yourself, and his name is Gojima. And if you are able to defeat Gojima, and here's a piece of art featuring him, that he will bestow on you the title of Sword Master, which we think is pretty cool. So,
yeah, I think there's a lot of excellent art here in the Swordmaster guide.
Thank you.
A lot of fun stuff.
I've been really excited about drawing all the Swordmaster stuff. It's been a lot of fun. So, once you unlock the Swordmaster job itself, it is really cool. First of all, Swordmaster is very much a combat job. It gives you 1 extra strong dice and 1 extra brave die. So in a lot of ways, it's very similar to Soul Thief as far as its aptitudes. However, I tend to think of Swordmaster as having more in common with Oathbreaker or Boulder Knight, in that it's a job that focuses on really, really strong offense, but can also pull back and do really strong defense. It's a job that has some glaring weaknesses. It's very, very strong and it's very, very tough, but it's ridiculously susceptible to magic. You're going to have a lot of time dealing with magic. You're going to have a tough time, but not that hard of a time dealing with smart-based attacks, so dialogue attacks or stuff like that, stuff like tease. You are also going to be relatively vulnerable to why am I blanking? Yeah, it has other vulnerabilities. You'll figure it out. The Swordmaster's job ability is very cool. So what it does is the Swordmaster is all about using a sword. Everything the Swordmaster does involves having a sword in your hands. This means that you're really vulnerable if you lose your sword. If somebody manages to disarm you, then all of a sudden you are an idiot who can't do anything. Which is a great reason to carry multiple swords, by the way, and one of the reasons we send you on a quest to get 2 swords in the beginning. So while you hold a sword in your hand, the Swordmaster can choose to use a different sword style at the beginning of every turn of a fight. So, for example, on round 1 of a fight, the Swordmaster says, I want to use my 2-handed sword style. And this is going to give them a huge bonus to doing damage during a fight. At the beginning of the next fight, they can say, I want to use my 1-handed sword style, which is a defensive sword style, which allows them to parry and block and gives them a huge defensive bonus. At the beginning of the 3rd round, they can switch to another sword style, perhaps the 2-sword style, which allows them to make 2 attacks in a row at a penalty. So the Swordmaster is hugely versatile. They also have a set of bespoke special dice, just like any other advanced job, and those are really cool as well. And we're going to wait till the book comes out so you can see those and really appreciate how awesome they are.
Yeah.
However, one of the really neat things that we like about the Swordmaster job is that it introduces a whole bunch of new mentors for you. We were talking about how mentors are really important, and each one of our job guides has come with a new mentor. The Black Mage job guide and the Shepherd job guide, as well as Quest, all had a bunch of mentors. The Swordmaster mentors are a little different, and here's why. You go to your Swordmaster mentors and you say, hey, I'd like to learn your sword style. And let me put a piece of art up here. So, for example, the Bun Bun Knight is one of the mentors that you can meet, and she is a king's person who is related to the Rabbit tribe, and she is going to teach you the ancestral sword style of the Rabbit tribe. So when you become her pupil, when you choose her as your mentor, she will send you on a quest, and if you complete that quest, you are going to learn her sword style, and her sword style involves being able to make movements anytime somebody misses you with an attack, which is really powerful. There are 5 different mentors, and each one has a unique sword style. So in fact, the Swordmaster can learn up to 8 different sword styles. Here is 2 more mentors, by the way, a deep mentor and a vampire mentor. And we'll save the other 2 for later. This makes the Swordmaster hugely versatile, and it gives you a reason to keep going on quests and keep meeting new Swordmasters and taking on new mentors. So the Swordmaster and your progression as a Swordmaster isn't just choosing a job, but it's going on a quest as a novice Swordmaster, becoming a real Swordmaster, and then traveling through Yeld and meeting different mentors and deciding to learn from them and learn their special techniques. And we think that's really cool and really fun. And at the end, as a reward, you're going to have a really cool collection of things you can do with your sword.
Yeah, similarly to how we set up, what is it, Minas Medusa's Dojo of Doom, where she as a mentor is providing you like this sort of combat mechanic. Mm-hmm. And that only lasts while you have her as your mentor, right? You can move between stuff, but while she's, your mentor, you get something special out of it. So it's sort of following the logic we've set up there.
Yeah, it's very much inspired by that. And in fact, one of the neat things we can do here is as we continue to release new content, we can release new mentors who can teach the Swordmaster new things. So it may be that as a sword master, your job ability continues to grow as you meet new mentors.
Yeah.
And that may be something we adopt with other jobs as well. We'll see. And of course, there's a bunch of other stuff in the Swordmaster Guide as well. There's a mastery job or a mastery quest that you can take. There's a bunch of history about Swordmasters in Yeld. There is a whole bunch of new stuff for a new rival you can meet who may eventually become your nemesis. That's another Swordmaster who may get jealous of you. And there are tons and tons of new swords for you to discover and win. And I'm posting a picture of some of those swords. So if you like swords, this is going to be a great expansion for you. And most of these swords are available to anybody who can use swords. So if you're a soul thief or a freelancer or a vampire or a red mage or a war mage, you can come and get these swords as well. So it's a bunch of new equipment for Yeld. And in fact, I said we weren't going to tell you about the Swordmaster special dice, but one of the Swordmaster special dice is just the ability to use swords no matter what job you have. So that's really useful if you become a sword master and then you switch to another job or you switch to a monster job and you still want to use swords. And in fact, sword masters are a little bit difficult to get because you have to unlock the job with a long quest to become a sword novice. But if you do, that's a neat reward that you can take to your next job.
Well, it's an interesting reward in the way that we don't have a lot of mechanics like that where it's specifically designed to be something you would carry with you, right? A lot of stuff is meant to be useful right now, and you're doing something with it in the moment. But this is definitely sort of a further along the line. I'm building my character for rank 3 or rank 4 when I've set up this whole amazing sword master who moved into vampire hunter who is now a werewolf, and now you're a werewolf running around with swords and all this stuff, which I think is super awesome.
Yeah. So that's what I have to talk about Swordmaster. Do you want to talk about the rank 1 adventure set?
Yeah, so we're not going to do too much on it because I want to get to some of these questions that we have too. Sure. But the rank 1 adventure set will be a nice collection of, specifically it's 5 adventures, and then a bunch of new rank 1 items, a bunch of new rank 1 monsters, some new bosses, and just some advice on how to both run rank 1 adventures and how to spend your reward dice as a hero in that first rank. And so the structure, the 5 adventures are sort of there to introduce players into kind of the structure between hunter fights, right? So, for example, your first adventure is you've gotten your jobs. Now let's sort of learn about them a bit, right? You're going to take some time to be like, okay, well, I'm a soul thief. So what does that mean? What are the kind of things I'm going to be doing? What are my skills, right? Your second adventure is going to be introducing you to what it means to be a hero and the types of things you're going to go out and do, how people are going to ask for your help or how people are going to want to fight against you because of that status. Your third adventure is mainly just about exploring Yeld, right? A lot of Yeld is getting to go from town to town, exploring the holidays, exploring all this like time-sensitive stuff. And so moving around is a big deal, right? So sort of that third adventure focuses on that. And then your fourth and fifth adventure are basically leading into your first hunter fight, right? Your fourth adventure is focused on the idea of introducing hunters, not only as something you have to deal with, but a force that is affecting Yeld itself. And so this is sort of giving you some motive into the reason of, if we do this, not only are we helping ourselves get home, but we are potentially helping the people of Yeld, right? So your fifth adventure is getting ready, preparing, and setting up for that first hunter fight, and then you're just ready to move into it. And then this structure can then be used over and over again, right? You do your hunter fight, you finish up, then your next adventure is sort of laying low, resting after the big fight, taking some time to recuperate, and then bam, you're back to adventuring, set up the next hunter, another hunter fight, right? So sort of assembling kind of a structure for that, an easy way for people to engage with the 7 hunters you have to go through to get to the end of the game. Yeah, and then of course, yeah, some new items, some new monsters, a couple of new special dice. There's a lot of special dice out there, and so I don't want to necessarily flood the game with a bunch of specialized because it's really easy to start creating things that are just so similar to stuff that already exists that it's kind of meaningless.
Yeah, creating new special beds is always a challenge.
Yeah, but there's a few new things, some stuff specific to the jobs, right? Because you're really at rank 1 only focused on the heroic jobs, right? You can't even get an advanced job at that point. But yeah, so it's going to be just a nice chunk of content that you can go through. That it's a guiding hand, right? That's its purpose, is to sort of get you from point A to point B in a way that will hopefully help people who aren't really common GMs, right? Because we want you rotating GMs. Hopefully, this will make it easier on those types of people, right? Because that's such an intimidating, thing for a lot of people. So yeah, that's its goal.
And as a physical product, what the book is going to look like is it's going to be, this is just a copy of the Black Mage job guide, but it'll be about the same physical size. We think it's going to be about 40 pages, maybe 48 pages.
Yeah, I mean, adding in some more like
we haven't done
here and there, but
we haven't done the layout yet, so we're still working.
Yeah.
But it's going to be 8.5 by 11. It's going to be in a bag, and then inserted with it is going to be 2 sheets of tokens.
Yeah.
And that'll be about 36 tokens, which will be all of the heroic jobs. There'll be a dog token. There'll be a bunch of monster tokens. And
tons.
We haven't decided for sure yet, but we may also include some stuff like some water tokens and some darkness tokens, depending on how much room we have.
Right. I mean, it's really about space,
We're trying to decide if we should do that or if we should do more monsters. One of the things that we'll include is all of the called monsters, like the Warhair and the Imaginary Friend.
Yeah, there's a lot of incidental stuff like that's I think people would love to have some tokens for. And again, it's not just going to be a collection of rank 1 stuff, right? There will be monsters from like rank 2 and rank 3. So it's not just like, only for rank 1 and then nothing after that.
Yeah. And if people like this, if people like these sets, we can continue to do, I mean, I'd love to do a rank 2 adventure set and a rank 2 adventure set eventually.
Yeah, that's something people are interested in for sure.
Yeah. Before we answer some questions, I just want to say really quickly, our next Kickstarter, our next book is going to be called The Monster Hunter's Guide to Yeld. We think that's what it's going to be called. And right now we think we're going to launch that Kickstarter in August. And with the hope that we will have the book done around next summer, and that it'll be available by the end of next year. And we want to do a hardcover book this time. We were really disappointed that the original Yeld book couldn't be hardcover, so we want to do a hardcover book next time. So that is hopefully coming in August, or the Kickstarter is hopefully coming in August, and of course the Kickstarter will come, just like the Mermaid Hunters Kickstarter will include a lot of other new content as well.
Yeah. And I mean, the book is going to have so much in it.
Yeah.
That I think it's definitely, it's meant to be, not a requirement, but it's like it's one of those books that I want people to see and be like, I need this for my game, right? Yeah. I need to have this because it's going to add so much to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the supplementary stuff we've done so far is awesome. I really enjoy making it. Not a requirement, right? Not this necessity. And again, I don't want you to have it, but I really want it to be something that people are interested in.
Yeah, I see.
As far as like a core piece of a book. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we tend to think of like the Kickstarters or the Patreon stuff we do as totally optional, just fun, nothing anybody needs. And even if you like it, you're probably only going to use some of it in your games. Whereas the expansions we release, like the Black Mage Guide or Towns and Territories Request, are stuff that we intended for people to use, but obviously it's not core rules. This new book will be a core rule book. It's designed so that once you have tried the main Yeld rule book and you're comfortable with it, you can move on to these rules, which adds so much to your games. So we're super excited about that. Let's answer some questions, since Disavowed Paladin and Glucifer and some of the rest of you have asked a ton of questions.
Let's see.
Let's start with Glucifer. And any questions we don't answer here, we'll answer. We'll type answers to later on. Glucifer asks if Jerkball will ever have rules. Jerkball was a gag in Modest Medusa. that involved Modest asking some Yeld kids if she could play with them, and then they just threw a ball in her face, and we decided to call it jerk ball. I think jerk ball could be a fun, simpler version of sports ball, and we might do rules for that at some point.
I mean, feel free to write your own if you'd like.
Yeah, if somebody wants to come up with some jerk ball rules and share them with us, that would be amazing. The other half of Lucifer's question, though, is that are there any rules that you play tested but were still blindsided by how players used?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
People are always doing things that it's not how we intended, and that's okay. I mean, that's how it works, right? You never know how people are going to interpret something or how they want to use something. And I mean, a lot of the time, how we write things is in such sort of a mechanical, video gamey way that I hope people approach it that way. But even that becomes a surprise sometimes, and how people, how far people will take that.
I think something we see a lot is that we will write. I think you're right. We take a video game approach to writing our rules instead of an tabletop RPG approach, or that's how I think of it. And I think that can be hard for players who are used to, like D&D, for example, to sometimes wrap their head around, and so they don't always play things the way we intend them to play. I'm often very surprised when we sit down to play with people who have been playing the game for a while and find out they just do things very, very differently than we do, or they don't engage with rules the same way we do, or they just ignore some rules that we think of as essential to the game. But that's just how role-playing games are.
Yeah. Grace says your webcam's blurry.
It is blurry. It's because it's a cheap webcam and it's trying to focus on the anime statue I have just right out of the field of vision. I will show you. It's trying to focus on that instead of me. I think that's a little better. Anyway, you don't need to see me. I'm not like, this isn't OnlyFans. You don't need. I don't need to be not blurry. So Glucifer asks, can you play an all or none fight versus the Hunters in a Voltron-like fight for all the keys? Jesus Christ, that would be something.
Be a lot.
I don't think that's a fight you could win, but that would be really neat. Maybe someday there will be something like that.
I mean, if you want to be like the world's first speed runner for tabletop RPGs, that could be a thing. Right.
Yeah, you could totally just cram all the Hunters into one fight and have all their mechanics going off at the same time, and have them be a giant 7-person tag team match that murders you in the first 2 rounds.
I do love the idea of like a mechanic where you literally glitch through Yeld like it's a video game.
That'd be fun.
Glitching through assets to get to
I think it would be really fun to have a campaign where the players are convinced that Yeld is actually a video game that they're stuck in, and all the evidence just keeps pointing to that. A little further down, Disavowed Paladin asks why there's only 7 Hunters, and let's go ahead and talk about that. We originally conceived the Hunters of Yeld as like the evil adventuring party. So because there's 8 heroic jobs, there's 7 Hunters and then Dragul. So they're meant to be your counterparts. They're meant to be the counterparts of the heroic jobs, and we focus on duality in Yeld a lot. We focus on pairings and the numbers 8 and 4 quite a bit. So that's all it is. There's no hidden depth to that beyond that. More questions.
How can the dog and friends age at the same rate when in Yeld?
I don't know.
Said so.
I mean, I don't know if you know this, but dogs and people do age at the same rate. But yeah, I know dog ears are weird and et cetera and et cetera. Please just hand wave that or justify it however you see fit. What I like to think of is that when the friends pass into Yeld, they're kids, so they may or may not really be keeping track too closely of how fast time passes. But I think everybody, whether they're dogs or kids, just kind of accepts that Yeld has a 100-day calendar, and they're getting older at a weird rate. It's something we don't really think about a lot.
After 1 year in Yale, with friends physically, biologically 1 Earth year older, yes.
Yeah. Again,
Yes, I guess is the simplest answer.
yeah, again, we hand wave that, but I do think they're aging at a biological age. I think a friend who starts in Yeld at 8 and escapes Yeld at 13 will look 5 years older. We can say that time passes. We can say that's magic of some kind, or time passes faster in Yeld. Or I mean, the truth is, we really don't know exactly what's going on with Yeld's time and how that works. And that's a side effect of it being both a narrative device and a game mechanic. So it is what it is. Is the supernatural strength that Mara displays relatively typical for friends? Yes. I wish we had talked about this more in the rulebook. I wish we imply this in the rulebook, but we never.
Yeah, we infer it a bit.
Yeah. When the friends take on their heroic jobs, they gain core dice. They gain strong dice or tough dice or smart dice, and this makes them physically stronger or physically tougher or physically smarter. It gives them a supernatural level of physical ability.
Yeah, I mean, if you just straight up look at the mechanics, when you compare like a hero to a monster in the game, they all use the same, sort of stats, right? It's all core dice. And so if just looking at that, you can see mechanically that these little kids are as strong as like a fairy is, right? And those things are like 8 feet tall, right? But we do not. I don't think there's a point where we explicitly say
we don't
have these superhuman powers, which is a mistake. We can certainly add that in.
We tried to. I tried to show that in the art. I tried to show pictures of like Keandra lifting up giant boulders, or Maria moving super fast as she stabs people in the back. And the idea is that when you take on these jobs, you are suddenly stronger than the strongest adult or you are so smart that everybody else seems like an idiot to you, or you are so brave that you have no trouble sprinting into a scary situation, and leaping over monsters. We wanted to show that these are superhuman aptitudes that set the kids apart, but we didn't do a good job of coming out and saying that. It was kind of a forest for the trees situation. We were so close to it, and it was so obvious to us that we didn't think to explicitly say it. So what you're going to continue to see as we put on new products is that we're going to continue to see that is very obvious. In Monarch Medusa, when Mara punches somebody so hard that they fly off the side of a building, that's part of her ability as an Oathbreaker. She has become superhumanly strong.
Can friends in the same party have different mentors? Yes.
Yes.
Again, I don't know if that's something we explicitly say, but it's inferred. Everybody can have their own mentor. Specifically, you would want that because if it's like you have one dog friend and they're like, I want the dog mentor, and the rest of you would be stuck with that, which would suck. So, different mentors for everybody.
Yeah, and of course you can all have the same mentor as well. But the idea is you're traveling around and meeting different mentors and doing different things. If you defeat the prince but don't kill him, can he be your mentor? We don't have official rules for that, but that's something I'm very interested in. The very first Yeld game Nick and I played, where I played a black mage and Nick played a witch hunter, which inspired those characters in the Yeld book, my black mage very quickly decided that she wanted Dragul to be her mentor, and she went full evil and learned a bunch of stuff from him. We want you to have a relationship with Dragul. We want that to be a possibility. We already present that in the book a little bit, in that Dragul sends you birthday gifts every year. He's a weird, creepy dude. He's definitely evil, but he's got his own stuff going on. So we want that to be a possibility for you. And we're going to provide more ways to do that as time goes on. We're going to provide interesting ways for you to build your relationship with the prince. Let's see.
Let's see. I'm aware that there is no map of Yeld as a whole. Any of you have no intention to make one, however. What about mapping individual towns' locations? I don't think we have an actual town map yet, do we?
No, I think that's an interesting idea. Eventually, we have plans and ideas, early plans and ideas for doing an expansion that's set around cities, and they would be. There aren't that many cities in Yeld, so they would be specific cities, and I think that would definitely include maps of not just the cities, but also maybe the regions around them. I think right now the only map we have in any Yeld product is the the awful map of the lake region that's in Mermaid Hunters, which I put in there solely because I realized that players might be confused as hell as to why there's no map, because Mermaid Hunters doesn't include any of the mapping rules or calendar rules from the Yeld rulebook.
When, like, I mean, maps in general is very much like, sorry, if it's something you want to do, right? If you have interest in making maps, right? So it's, you know.
But at the same time, I can totally see the benefit of having maps for actual places in Yeld, which we discuss a lot. So yeah, probably there will eventually be a map for Pirate Bay. Probably there will eventually be a map for some of the other more iconic Yeld locations.
Yeah, and as we go along, we definitely just want to be creating more digital assets to be able to play online in places like Roll20. So having things like maps is, you know, something people like for that kind of thing.
Yeah. And, you know, if there's more demand for that kind of thing, we might address that more as well. Do mermaids have last names? That's a really interesting question. We're going to talk a lot more about mermaids in our next book, and about mermaid culture, and how there's actually two distinct mermaid cultures now. There's the mermaids of the deep, who live in the oceans and they serve the deep, and then there's the mermaids of Yeld, who either defected from the deep or were born in Yeld and have lived there their entire life. I don't really know how the mermaids of the deep work. I mean, we haven't explored them a lot. I think the mermaids of Yeld may or may not have last names or family names, depending on what parts of Yeld they grew up in. Also, I mean, you get mermaids because mermaids have sex with other people who aren't mermaids, or, well, mostly. So, you know, if you have a mermaid who makes a family with a king's person, then the question is, do they take on the king's person's family name, or does something else happen? And there's a lot of possibilities there. So some mermaids definitely have last names. Miss Vanessa, who is the antagonist in Mermaid Hunters, I think Vanessa is her family name.
Yeah, she could just be Vanessa.
I don't know. I think there's definitely a possibility. The two mermaids that I think people are most familiar with are Deb and Jen from Modest Medusa, and they do not seem to have family names. So we'll learn more about that in the next book, and the next book is going to be a great place for Nick and I to flesh that out and to unpack a lot of ideas for mermaids. Let's see. Why is Sarah the only person to hold two monster jobs? Is a good question. And first of all, the heroic jobs that we decided to give to each of the friends, Sarah as the witch, Keandra as the Oathbreaker, etc., we consider that canon. The advanced jobs and the monster jobs are kind of loose canon. They represent things that might happen in the Yeld narrative. I don't think anything is set in stone. Originally, the idea is we would develop each character, and every character would receive an advanced job and then a monster job. And the idea here is these are just supposed to be your point of view characters that you see Yeld through, and you follow their narrative both through the art and the comics and other stuff. I accidentally gave Sarah two monster jobs. I designed the Hunter in Darkness and the Serpent Oracle at the same time, and I wasn't really thinking about it, and they both ended up being Sarah. So those represent two possibilities.
If I remember right, the reason that ended up happening is just we weren't thinking about it because the Hunter in Darkness wasn't originally in the main book. It was a stretch goal, right? And so it was sort of an afterthought drawing, I think, and just we had already planned out all this art for everything else, and then we were adding in this extra thing. And again, I mean, I don't think it's like a lot of the examples we see, like the pictures of the kids, isn't necessarily like I don't necessarily think of it as like this canon thing specifically that's like this has to happen, right? This is what they are, right? Like Dino doesn't have to be a witch hunter. It's just this is how we're depicting this, and this is sort of how we're showing these are the adventures that this is what they're doing. So I don't know if that's necessarily set in stone.
No, it's
I think
not.
A lot of that really comes down to what you do with the comics, right? As you progress with your,
Well, and the comics have been kind of an interesting thing in both the comics that we include in the rule books, but also Modest Medusa. As some of the Yeld characters, like Shin, for example, show up in Modest Medusa, it kind of cements their canon. Like, we know Shin is a shepherd still, even after several years it being in Yeld, because he's a shepherd in Modest Medusa. And similarly, we know Keandra has become a werewolf in Modest Medusa. And so, I don't know. Canon's a little strange in Yeld. It sometimes to me seems like Modest Medusa kind of solidifies canon that we present as options in the Yeld rulebooks. And I guess that can probably be confusing for some of our readers.
I always think of it in the same way of like, if it's like the D&D context of like, D&D is literally about like 6 dudes who are famous, right? And if you're not playing one of those 6 dudes, you're really not important. And so like people sort of hand wave those 6 dudes out of the way, right? Like if D&D is presented the way it is, it's like, well, like Drizzt or something is like the most important person in the world, and you are nothing comparatively. So it's I think it's important to sort of remove them from the equation to allow your story to be more important, to allow your story to maybe step on the canon that has been assembled another way. That's fine, right? We want you to be able to play Yeld the way you want to play Yeld, right?
Right. Let's just do a few more questions before we end here. And again, if we don't get to your question, we'll definitely come back to it in text. Grey Malkin asks, can we get a set of random tables for coming up with quests, or perhaps even generating NPCs with unique appearances and interesting personality quirks? And the answer is yes. We love shit like that. You're going to see that in the monster book, or possibly in an expansion if we don't have room for it in the monster book. And by the way, we refer to it as the monster book, but it's not a monster manual. It's a full expansion that has a big focus on monsters.
Let's see.
Dragul's helmet is not stuck to his head. He can take off his helmet. The prince does not have a helmet stuck to his head. There's a reason we never see him take off his helmet, which you'll find out eventually.
I noticed there's no real content provided for running advanced and mastery quests. Yeah, you get a prompt. And specifically that's because I want people to have a vague idea of what they're supposed to do, but I want you to be able to run whatever adventure you're going to run. I don't necessarily want you to steal an entire session away from your group to do this one thing for one player. So I think leaving it vague, leaving it loose, allows people to fit it where they need to. And I always prefer that kind of thing anyway. Like if I'm just given something vague to work with, I always do better than if I'm given this like rigid structure. But that's just me.
But that's why we want you to play Yeld. Even when we provide more structured adventures like Mermaid Hunters, we want you to be making it your own. So there's 2 questions I want to answer here before we're done, and they're kind of related. Grey Malkin asks, can we get a princess advanced job? It would be cool if one of the friends could be the heir to the throne of Yeld. We've talked about that. And we've talked about kind of versions of that, and it might be on the table. What you're definitely going to see, not in the next book, but after that sometime, is a job that allows you to be the Pistol Princess of Pirate Bay, which is obviously not the Princess of Yeld, but is a specific position in the Society of Yeld. And it's an advanced job that there's only one Pistol Princess, and you will be that person. And speaking of Pirate Bay, just about Paladin asks, what kind of being is the seamstress of Pirate Bay? We have never really talked about her species, but she is the same kind of, she is the same species as the, what's his name from the Soul Thief book?
The Archivist.
The Archivist.
Grand Archivist.
Yeah, she's, like a 9-foot-tall, 4-armed weirdo. And she's been alive forever. And she is the wife of the princess, although the princess is long dead at this point. And she's going to be really important when we start talking about Pirate Bay, and she'll be a character you can interact with and learn from. And that's where we'll learn more about what she's all about. And I think that's all the time we have questions for. Nope. That's all the questions we have time for. That's the right way to say that. Is there anything else you want to say before we're done here?
I don't think there's anything I want to add, except thanks for everybody for sticking around and asking questions. And like I said, we'll answer everything else as well off of stream here.
Yeah, thank you all so much. We'll be doing another one of these next month, probably. And by that time, we'll have a lot more news to share with you, and maybe even a preview of what we're going to do for our next Kickstarter. All right. Thanks so much. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.